Hello. Thank you all for joining us today for the What Works Cities Executive Leadership Conversation Series with Phoenix, Arizona Mayor Kate Gallego. I'm Rochelle Haynes, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Managing Director of What Works Cities. What Works Cities was created by Bloomberg Philanthropies and is led by Results for America. Our mission at Results for America is to invest in making what works the new normal at all levels of government, federal, state, and local. For the past 11 years, we have worked with decision makers to effectively invest in programs and policies focused on advancing resident well-being with a lens towards economic mobility. For those of you who are new to What Works Cities was created in 2015 to recognize and celebrate local government for the exceptional use of data-informed policy decisions, allocate funding, improve services, and most importantly, engage residents and stakeholders. What Works Cities supports cities at all points on their data journey with a first of its kind standard of excellence that shows how investing in data and evidence-based programming and practices can lead to more equitable outcomes for residents. We do this by setting a North Star on what good looks like, which is our What Works Cities certification program. We provide capacity building assistance to support cities with upskilling. And we're building momentum by celebrating cities, having some fun, and elevating why this work is so important. Today, we have the absolute pleasure of being joined by Mayor Kate Gallego. Welcome, Mayor Gallego. We're thrilled to have you. Mayor Gallego has served as Phoenix's mayor since 2019. What Works Cities has had the honor of working with Mayor Gallego and her awesome team twice. First in 2020, when Phoenix achieved silver certification, and then in 2021, just 1 year later, when the city leveled up to gold certification. During Mayor Gallego's time in office, she has focused on three key policy areas: diversifying the economy. In December 2022, under Mayor Gallego's leadership, the city landed its largest ever business development deal, a $40 billion semiconductor manufacturing plant. She also focuses on strengthening infrastructure investments, as well as working to make Phoenix a leader in sustainability, with the goal to have Phoenix become the most sustainable desert city in the US. She has made investments in cool solutions and helped to establish the first publicly funded Office of Heat Response and Mitigation. Today, we'll be discussing Phoenix's cutting-edge open data work, how the city built it, overcame challenges, and why it is essential for data-driven cities. Thank you, Mayor Gallego, again for joining us today.
Thank you, Rochelle. It is wonderful to be with you, and thank you for what the What Works Cities initiative has done to help Phoenix be a better run, more efficient, and more fair city. I have really enjoyed working with you, and I just want to start by thanking all of you who are online today who have dedicated your life to local government. I come from the generation that was making career decisions in the time period after 9/11, and I always remember it was cities that really came to the rescue and rebuilt our country. I have always felt that cities is where the real action happens. So I want to thank those of you who work directly for cities and those of you who support the work we are doing. But a special shout out to my team at the City of Phoenix, including our Chief Innovation Officer, Michael Hammett, who has been my partner on making sure we use data in creative and fun ways to have a better, stronger city. I am a MBA by background and have an environmental degree. And so no surprise, I love when we can measure and demonstrate what we're actually doing for our residents and that we are getting results. So I've appreciated the partnership in helping us both tell the story and make sure we are making the right decisions for our residents. So I look forward to sharing what we are doing in Phoenix and learning from all of you.
Wonderful. Mayor, thank you for your remarks. Now we'll get started. To everyone attending, thank you for attending, but also please feel to put your questions in the chat and our team will queue them up for the question and answer session. Okay, now we'll get started. I'd love to kick off the conversation with how Phoenix got started with open data and how it's impacted the city. And so first question is, what motivated the city of Phoenix to adopt an open data policy and what impact has it had on the city as well as its residents?
We have found that sharing data with our residents helps build confidence in government and get great ideas from our community. We are lucky to be home to many centers of innovation, including a great entrepreneurial community and wonderful university partners. And we found the more we gave them the tools to solve our problems, the more they could deliver for us. And so that's everything from sharing data about where we're impacted most by heat with our residents, who can then come up with great solutions, to also just basic government transparency by putting our financial books out there and in the record. We hope people can understand we are spending their money in ways that make us proud and that we believe is very efficient. We think it's a good tool for both our press partners as well as our residents. And so it's been a success for us so far.
Have you gotten any interesting resident feedback?
You wouldn't be surprised what some of the pain points are. And it's nice when residents complain about something and then can help us solve it. It's been everything from people who had a hard time finding a parking space and wanted to know what data we had on that to come up with a tool, to people who are trying to help us redesign our bus system so that there's more shade and comfort. In the heat of the summer in Phoenix, shade is very, very sought after, and our residents have gotten very creative about how to make sure people can find it, which wasn't obvious to me as mayor that that's where people would go. But it's nice, instead of complaining, people are solving, and that's the beauty of open data.
Wonderful. And I think part of that is, like, last year you launched the new city manager's performance dashboard. It's a fully publicly available dashboard. It has comprehensive information about how do you access services and programs. What has been the response to the dashboard?
It's been very helpful for us. Sometimes residents don't see all of the programs that we're doing, and being able, for example, housing and homelessness is a real challenge for us. And we've struggled. It is easier to see the people who are unsheltered and who really need help than, it's easier to see tents than keys, right? We have helped thousands and thousands of people get high quality housing, but we've struggled to show that to our residents, and the city manager's dashboard helps us do that and better articulate what we are doing on their behalf. It's also been, people have used it to hold us accountable in areas where they would like to see us improve. We have heard from our residents.
I think that's the sweet spot, right? With open data, is I think it opens up the doors, right? It allows for transparency, it allows for that trust building, but it also allows residents to become part of the process in some ways. And so maybe you can touch on a little bit about what his civic engagement and collaboration has been like since the open data policies were rolled out.
It's been wonderful in that sometimes people will come up with solutions and then come to us. It's helped in a variety of different ways that weren't completely expected to me. For example, I am passionate about equal pay for equal work, and salary transparency has helped folks in the private sector say, well, look what the city is paying, but it's also helped our employees advocate for themselves with data. My goal is that Phoenix be a big contributor to closing different pay gaps, whether it be between men and women, communities of color, and just having that data out there has made an impact.
Absolutely. That's great. I think one of the things we know is, like many staff know, developing and maintaining a robust open data strategy is sometimes easier said than done. It has great intentions, but it's harder. How does the city of Phoenix ensure that the data that is released is accurate, reliable, and up to date?
We try as much as possible to connect in the original data source so that it's automatically populated as different data changes. We also are very interested in feedback from our residents about what data sets they want us to develop. And that has caused us to partner, including at more of a regional level, where we can work with other cities, because we know we're in a very tightly packed region where we're connected with several other municipalities, and issues from traffic management to housing don't stop at our borders. So that demand has been great and has helped us work with fellow mayors to bring more to the forefront. And we've gradually been collecting more and more data sources and connecting it to the open data portal.
Wonderful. Have there been challenges or obstacles as you rolled out your open data policies and practices?
We have had times when the data has not been updated as much as possible. And so it didn't accurately reflect the situation. And that was a learning lesson. Sometimes people would go directly to the open data without checking with us, and we wouldn't have had the most updated. So we are working in that area. And sometimes it is important to provide context to the data, which if a machine is doing a query is not always automatic. And then staffing is a challenge. Folks with technology skills are very much in demand right now. And so we have a very competitive labor market in the city of Phoenix where, talent can go where talent wants to go. And so we, in some cases, have had to restructure how we staff it to make sure we can get high-level folks who can deliver the results our residents want. But we're hiring in the city of Phoenix if anyone is watching and trying to figure out what's next. Maybe this is your sign.
I love it. And given the challenges, obviously open data, it's a very manual and sort of labor intensive process. Obviously there's staffing challenges. The tech market is hot. And so you're sort of trying to keep pace with the maintenance of it all. So how are you thinking about like long-term sustainability when it comes to open data programs?
We are hoping as much as possible to automate and connect with databases so that it is not as driven by those manual processes, which I think is better for our residents and they get the data sooner, and probably better for our employees who would rather spend their time about how do we create the right data sets and how do we architect the overall project as opposed to like manually uploading data. And our private sector partners have been very excited about that, and they share that goal as well. There's a little bit of tensions in like, do we try to get specialized databases for every challenge we have at the city that really produce the queries people want versus having standardized data across the city that is not as specialized.
Mm-hmm. What impact do you think sort of this open data policy will have on the future of Phoenix? And like, how are you thinking about continuing to innovate and be creative and with this digital transformation?
So one of the areas that I'll give as an example is we think a lot about climate change and heat. Phoenix is at the forefront on that issue, and we also hope to be on the forefront of solutions. So we want to attract people who are interested in the same challenges we are, and we think for the best technological and scientific minds, being a city that's on the forefront of data makes us an exciting environment for talent. We have just a huge variety of different data sets around heat and climate change, including just mapping our entire city for where are the hottest spots. And because of different choices in building materials and construction, there is real variation across the city. We're trying to look at how do we plant trees and make sure that the wonderful green and shading is distributed in an equitable way. And so we have a mapping challenge with that, as well as goals for ourselves with a focus on equity. We're trying to put heat sensors throughout the city of Phoenix so that we can demonstrate to our residents where the challenges are, but also where we deliver results. I think with a challenge like climate change, there's a real question mark for some of our residents about whether we can make a difference. We've put in programs like Cool Pavement, which Arizona State University has found can do a 10-degree difference in the heat with a lighter colored coating on our pavement. So 10 degrees is enough that you can feel it as residents. And so maybe that gives us a way to show results and that we can make a difference so that we don't all throw our hands up and say climate change is beyond us. And if you really do feel more comfortable, you're more likely to support your local government continuing to be part of the solution and make changes. And it's not just our pavement, we're also doing tree planting in corridors to make it more comfortable and requiring our private sector partners to help us with shade. So part of what people will respond to is if they personally feel more comfortable, but also if we can show them data that gives us more space to keep innovating and keep investing.
Absolutely. And given the success you've had with the heat mapping and making it an equitable process, making it an open process to engage all of the residents in Phoenix, How are you thinking about expanding the types of data that the city releases to the public? Or is there other thinking in terms of other areas where you want to be sort of thinking about how to use technology and data for more equitable services?
What we have found is that making decisions based on data helps us be more fair and distribute resources where there's greatest need, but also throughout the city. When I was first elected, we were in a deficit. We were recovering from a really tough downturn in the real estate market, which hit Phoenix harder than many other cities. And in a scarce resource environment, so many of our decisions were based on complaints. And that meant we kept investing in the same areas over and over again, which tended to be some of our wealthiest areas. When people pushed us on how we were making decisions, we didn't have the right story to tell. It's not satisfying for anyone that's saying that area got the most investments because they complained the most, unless you are in that area. And so we have tried to really invest in tools throughout the city so that we can make those decisions based on data. One that's been very popular is everyone would like their street repaved at the same time.
Of course.
We do it based on, we still respond absolutely to complaints. So if you see a pothole in Phoenix, you can report it on your phone and we'll get out there. But we now have pavement maintenance vans that go out and really measure how bad the streets are and give us a great map about where the greatest need is. And building on that success, we are hoping to have more tools that go out and map the entire city so that more and more of our decisions are based on citywide data sets. Phoenix is both a large city in population, the 5th largest in the country, as well as in geography. So we're more than 500 square miles. And we can't necessarily be everywhere at once unless we use data. So that's been exciting for us. We are a Western city with drought. And one of the things I'll be pushing with my team today when we have a big meeting on water is how do we make sure we have the best data around leaks and also where we are likely to have problems in our water system. Regardless of where you are on the political spectrum, if a pipe has a huge break line, it's gushing water, you don't like it. And so how can we use data to try to predict where we're most vulnerable and hopefully get ahead of it, which saves money and it saves water and you don't have to divert traffic because there's a giant gusher in the middle of desert. So a real win from every possible perspective.
A real win, and a real win that directly impacts someone's life, right? I think that you can never think that those things are too small to be addressed because someone's watching, right? And for the residents, they see that commitment. I think as we think about open data, digital transformation, using this, I'm also thinking about how are you also making sure like all residents have access to data and are part of this digital transformation? I know one of the things that we think about a lot here at What Works Cities is broadband access. And so just curious your thoughts on that.
That is a top priority for us. Phoenix has a huge number of school districts that are based on geography, and some parts of our city had phenomenal connectivity rates during COVID and were able to do virtual learning really successfully, and others had very poor areas of connectivity and couldn't. So we have made it a priority to address that, starting with our public housing residents and students. So a real point of pride for us is that we got 1 device per student to all of our K-12 students in the city of Phoenix. And that is life-changing. I mean, at the beginning of the pandemic, I talked to a mom who had 3 kids and 1 phone and no other connectivity devices. It was her phone. So I don't know how you feel, but like I have a 6-year-old and when he has my phone, I'm a little bit like about if he's going to auto reply and also what I'm missing. And her kids had to educate themselves with just 1 phone. So it was life-changing for them each to have device and to have connectivity. And that's a benefit that continues now that they have gone back to in-person schooling, and she has access to devices that can help her see better employment opportunities, more efficiently manage her finances. So we continue to have programs where you can check out devices from the library, as well as a hotspot. We're working to do a fiber canopy with our school district partners to get kids online and then to really promote the federal program for affordable connectivity. So for us, the strategy has been getting devices to our residents and getting affordable, or hopefully for students, free connections. And that's been, I think, a silver lining of COVID. So more and more people can get devices. At the same time, we are aware residents are accessing our data sources on their phones. And so we are putting more and more resources into mobile connectivity. There was a time at the city where we really designed for people to be on a desktop, and that is just not what our residents are demanding. They are out in the community. They want to tell us problems, they want to find information, and they want to query. So we are responding to the realities that our residents are on the go, and the phone is the key connectivity device for so many of us.
That's wonderful. And I think that that just makes for a more robust, right, sort of open and transparent policy, because it's not only putting the data out there, but also making sure residents and all your residents have access to it. And then thinking about also just like connectivity, making sure kids have access. And I think that's great. We have an audience question, so I will start to take those in. If you haven't put a question in a chat, please do so. With the demands on the city IT for support to other critical functions, do you think there might be some other organizations better suited to stewarding your open data portals, such as the city library system or a local university partner? How have you explored these options, and do you see them as viable?
So for us, the data sources are maintained in every single department. And so hopefully my message and our team's message is that no silos on this, and that we all have to work together. The databases have huge variety. Some of them are very new, and some of them are frankly designed in programming languages that aren't really taught in schools anymore. And so we are trying to connect as many as possible. I think for me, the message is it has to be a citywide effort, and that every department needs to be involved in leadership. A lot of people who originally didn't think of themselves as part of the open data team are now realizing it is part of their responsibility. And so instead of saying there's a very small, narrow group that has responsibility and is in charge, I hope the message is that we can all contribute, and that also we want ideas from all over, because sometimes it's the frontline workers who work with residents who see a problem way before those of us who are in City Hall. And so we want their creativity and to know what our residents' pain points are, as well as what they're enjoying and using the best.
Great. We have a question here on how do you get leadership to commit to open data, both in terms of financial investment and staff time? What do you find the most compelling cases are when you're making this case as, I guess, a staffer to leadership on why this is important? And then there was a follow-up question on just someone's curious on how large your open data team is.
So for me, it's demonstrating results to residents. For us at the city, we were spending enormous amounts of money on programs and not being as effective at articulating them. So if our residents really see what we're doing matters through data, that can be very helpful in getting political support. For us, for me as an elected official, there's doing the work, but there's also explaining it to our residents, and in an area where frankly people in my profession are not universally trusted. Sometimes direct access to the data can really be more transparent and accountable. So hopefully when our residents really value it, we have some parts of our data systems that use much more than others. And so those do get a little bit more investment if they're getting queried and used. And we ultimately all work for our residents, and what helps them should drive what makes us a better city and where we invest. I think the more that you have, again, real data, including surveying residents and seeing that they value it, that can be very helpful. Early on, a lot, it was not as obvious to our residents that we had these tools, and the more we invest in that, the more they get used as well. So to me, your public information officer team needs to be part of this, and the rollout matters, and then continuous updates. We right now have gone through 2 levels of the What Works City certification, and it's my personal goal that we get to platinum. So that will give us more opportunities to go out to our residents as we go through that process and remind them what we do have, but also when you have goals, and that gives you the more systems to move them forward and both invest on our city side and then remind residents that we have tools. And I would say our universities have also been really key. There are many data sets that go into people's senior thesis or graduate dissertation, and then they go out and communicate what we're doing at the city. They help us with ideas to do it better. And the university community has been particularly powerful advocates for data.
Wonderful. That's great. So we are a global program now. And so I have a question here from some of our friends in Rio de Janeiro. They are structuring the data in a municipal data lake, no longer using ArcGIS. And they wanted to ask if Phoenix's open data allows access to citizens or just a dashboard. How do you assemble your team administratively? And thinking about how to make sort of ingesting municipal data in a responsible and thoughtful way in the data lake.
Great questions, and I'm a huge fan of Rio and the work you folks are doing. So honored to have you join us. As much as possible, we try to get it so that people in our community can query our databases. So you can go on our phoenix.gov and look up how much my salary is, as well as others. We still do a fair amount of ArcGIS, and we try to get city databases, including for planning out in the community, so that our residents can use them, and then leverage, particularly our federal government has been doing some great investments on everything from emergency response planning to satellite data. And hopefully we're more and more integrated with all of these. And sometimes we at the city have to keep up with, like, Google Maps might have better mapping and more updated photos than we do. So the more we can connect with private sector partners who are making great innovations in these areas, the better. I certainly don't feel like we have to always be the one producing the product, and we can just help our community understand what data sets are out there. That is great. I try to not just invest in our city, but tell our residents what else is out there. And then we often connect, in our case, particularly with Arizona State University databases that have original source information as well. So partnerships is key to open data, and realizing no one source has all of the data.
That's great. And I love that you have those partnerships, right? To think about it, because it's not done in a silo, right? Like, cities require those public-private partnerships as well. We have a question here on, like, how many city departments are actually required in Phoenix to have open data dashboards like their budget information? Is it all the departments, or is it some?
So we hope it is a citywide priority. If you haven't had a chance to click on the link to the city management dashboard, I would recommend you do so. We still have some data sets that are not fully linked, so we're always trying to improve. It's been a major task for our entire city to try to modernize databases. And I mentioned earlier, we've had the real challenge where some of our data is in databases that are in those programming languages we barely use anymore. So as much as possible, we're trying to migrate those, but there have been pain points along the way when the first update was blank or some of those issues. And I think from my perspective, it's been helpful to have private sector consulting support who've already been through these migrations to help us learn from some of the mistakes that others have made. And again, we do try to respond to demand. So if people are saying, here's a data set that you need, we do respond to that. And then again, staffing, we have some at all levels of the data process opportunities to continue to hire folks. And it's not just on the data side. We have swimming pools in Phoenix that won't open this summer because we couldn't find pool managers. It's just a tough hiring environment right now in a very competitive labor market. So if folks have solved that problem, let us know.
That's what we're here for, right? Let us know, share that information in our community platform. That'd be a great discussion thread on hiring in city for city services. A question here, have you seen any downsides in open data? For example, misuse in the creation of public facing diagrams or maps based on data entities using the data against the city because it reveals negative or problematic patterns. Do you think companies that exploit public data should ever compensate the city for use of data? Lots in that question.
So we've had real challenges with people trying to use our databases to get free marketing information. And we are very honored that we have residents' personal information, but we have to protect that in a way as much as possible. So when we do data requests, we try to focus on philanthropy or community-minded goals and not giving one business free marketing and access to free data sets. We also try to think through what are some of the implications of data sets. So one debate we're having right now where we have elected officials on multiple sides is we are seeing mobile home facilities redevelop in the city of Phoenix. So they tend to be large plots of land that have zoning for apartments, and we have a booming multifamily market. But there's huge implications when people get displaced from their homes. And so we're having a conversation. Some people would like to have a database of all the mobile homes so that we can provide services and really support residents, but then others are concerned that that'll become a trove of information for people who want to buy the parks and displace residents. And so no perfect answer. I think there are good arguments and negatives on both sides.
Absolutely. How do you balance releasing data that's sophisticated enough for researchers to use, but also accessible for newcomers, for your residents? And I'll tie on to that. How have you used sort of the media to leverage sort of open data and talk about your work?
So we try to be very careful, and anytime there's personal information, and the more we can get it at higher level. Sometimes there's information that even at the census block level, it can become pretty clear who are the individuals being impacted. We have some standard research agreements with our university partners in particular, and then we are trying to get more sophisticated about, I guess, anonymizing the data so that we can share it in a way that's useful to researchers, but really protects privacy. We also have to work very hard to follow the huge amount of laws that govern us, particularly around public safety. There are very justifiable protections for our residents. And so in medical and safety things, I think we err on the side of protecting residents' privacy as much as possible. In other things like our traffic management data, or parking spaces has been one where I think it's pretty fair to share which parking spaces are the busiest, and we've not seen as many troubling issues. And then increasingly national security has been a concern. And so we know certain data about critical infrastructure could be dangerous, and we work closely with the federal government, which has pretty good guidance for cities on where to be careful and where we have more ability to share data. But unfortunately, it's a tough world out there, and there are people who use this data to reduce safety for our residents. We got to be sober about the risks in those particular areas.
How have you sort of leveraged your open data policies and portals to sort of communicate your message to through the media?
So I've mentioned two examples already with heat, demonstrating to our residents that we really can make a difference and make the community more comfortable. But let me dive down on one project in particular. We are redeveloping public housing in the city of Phoenix, and we had a facility that was very out of date. It did not have high quality cooling and was using older materials that were not well ventilated and that tend to really maintain heat. And so we created a data set ahead of time with Arizona State University. And then as we have redeveloped We are updating that data set, and that's been very helpful so far in showing what a difference it has made in health and safety and comfort.
Mhm.
And then we are sharing that with federal partners who are looking at how they design new programs to take, like the Housing and Urban Development Department is now getting much more interested in climate change. And so that data set has helped them inform programmatic and program design decisions, which is great news for us because the more they design programs, understanding what our needs are, the more we can help residents. And I think it has the chance, particularly for our older adults and people with medical vulnerabilities, to be life-saving. So those are the good days as mayor, when you can try to have great data partnerships that make a huge difference in people's lives.
Absolutely. And you touched on just now partnerships. And we got a question here. It said, Mayor, you mentioned the use of private consultants to assist with moving towards the use of open data. For smaller cities looking at this process for the first time, can you share some key information that should go into an RFP?
Depending on your procurement, you might even want to do a request for information first and just have a conversation about what is out there. It is also as helpful as possible to make a more complete list of what are the data sources you are hoping to migrate and what are the back end solutions. I frankly was a little bit surprised about just the huge number of data sources and database tools that we had in a variety of different languages. And so the more you can get a consultant that has some familiarity with working with what tools are out there, that is very important. And then I think for many communities, police department data is particularly sensitive, and you want to make sure that that migration goes very, very well. So understanding where your data is in the area. I would also recommend, if you have audit folks on the technology side, that they are involved in the decision and can understand how to meet your requirements in those areas.
That's great. I love the practical and tactical steps that you included there. That's awesome. I think the question is, so we know that having open data has allowed residents to engage and have given feedback. This question is more about what improvements have been on internal data because it's being released externally. Has it improved the engagement of external partners as well as how your internal agency staff are responding?
It's a real pressure to keep your databases updated and accurate. For us, one of the key takeaways our employees have given to us is the more we can automate, the better. In many departments, that is very possible. In others where there's case-specific privacy protections, we are still working on those tools. And I think it's checking in with our staff regularly about pay points is key. It's been very helpful because during my time as mayor, we've been going through the What Works City process multiple times. And so it's given us a chance to have these conversations in a sort of safer environment where we're thinking strategically and it's not trying to accuse anyone of messing up. It's all about just continuous progress. And so that's been a healthy environment for conversation. But we've also had points where reporters have done queries that weren't accurate, and we've had a little bit of catching up to do. And so you learn quickly in those situations and try to not make the same mistake twice.
Exactly. We're almost at time. We could have kept going. These questions are great. Thank you. So Mayor, I just wanted to turn it to you for any final thoughts, reflections that you want to share.
I just wish everyone the chance to have fun with it. The nice thing about open data is that you can learn about your city. So many of us have dedicated our lives to our city, but we can still be surprised by what resources we already have and what creativity is in our mix. And I would just advise you, as much as possible, when you come up with great ideas, make sure that you highlight those success stories and celebrate them, because it builds the momentum to keep going, and it also makes the work more rewarding.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us today. We genuinely appreciate it. Thank you for being a friend of the program, and we look forward to supporting you with going to platinum. That's next. You put it out there, so we're on it with you. I did want to say a special thank you to the What Works Cities team, Nana, Catherine, Molly, and Cheryl for organizing today. Special thank you to Michael Hammett, who's Phoenix's Director of Innovation, but is also a What Works City ambassador and a friend to the program. And just again, Mayor Gallego, a special thank you to you and your commitment to this work. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much, and good luck to all the cities out there that are going through this.
Great. Thank you all. Stay in touch. Follow us on social media.